Hello newbies, this is Suspect Amy, and I'm here with a quick video about the end of service announcement for War of the Visions, and how the game's direction differed from something like Epic 7, which launched around the same time. I know I haven't made a War of the Visions video since like November, but this game was a big part of my channel. I just counted. I have over 100 videos on it, so I'd like to give my 2 cents here. Rather than the same sad trip down memory lane that every other creator is doing on this topic, I'm coming at it from a place of extreme disappointment. I'm not disappointed that the game is ending in its current state. Honestly, I'm a bit surprised, because at this point, all it really does is translate text from the Japanese version and release it a month later for an easy $300,000 per month or so. With how greedy this game was, I'm shocked they're not milking it longer. What I'm disappointed about is the missed potential. Before I get into that, let's first talk about my 2 favorite gacha games. Epic 7 launched in late 2018, and War of the Visions launched about a year later. Both games had amazing character designs, really fun gameplay, and enjoyable PvP. But they both had a major problem. They were incredibly hostile to new players. War of the Visions was ridiculously complex. You needed detailed guides for practically every mechanic. Epic 7's gear RNG meant you had to grind for literally years to make serious progress in PvP. They were also both badly in need of quality of life updates, and the improvements were rolled out painfully slow. Do you guys remember the dog walking you had to do to level up heroes in Epic 7? Or how you had to build affinity with literally everything in War of the Visions? Terrible systems, but kind of par for the course with gachas back then. Let's talk revenue. I could only find data starting in late 2022. Here's a chart. Epic 7 is in yellow, and War of the Visions is in blue. As you can see, the 2 games were kind of neck and neck at the end of 2022. Then suddenly there's a massive spike for War of the Visions in November. People might not like to hear this, but that spike is almost certainly due to the Addison Rae collab announcement. I thought that had to be a mistake, because that collab is considered one of the biggest flops in War of the Visions history. But there's no other explanation for such a huge jump. There were no new game modes, no special rewards, and the units released at the time, Alaya and Sylvie, were pretty average. Another reason I think this spike came from Addison Rae fans, it's clear they tried the game, spent a few bucks, and then dipped almost immediately. What did they expect when they marketed an extremely complicated strategy game to 13-year-old girls without making it easier to learn? So how did the game do when the actual Addison Rae unit released? It's this point here. And to all the Addison Rae haters who say she marked the beginning of the end, you might be right. By that point, her popularity was fading. Her fans had already tried and abandoned the game, and the unit just alienated players who were here for the Final Fantasy elements. Anyway, back to Epic 7. While Addison Rae was tanking War of the Visions, Epic 7 saw a huge resurgence. Why? Because they launched the game in China and they planned it perfectly. They timed it right before their big summer event, which included beautiful characters like Ice Cream Luluka and Lethe, and it ended with Navy Captain Landy, who single-handedly created a new PvP meta. That's not all. With the influx of new Chinese players, they launched an event to help new players get good gear quickly, without months of grinding. Let's zoom in on Epic 7's incredible 4-month run. While the Chinese market started strong, with $4 million at launch, it trended down quickly. But Epic 7 noticed that their new player-friendly content was attracting global players, who were actually sticking with the game. Again, this data is just estimates from Reddit, so take it with a grain of salt. But I wonder if this is when Epic 7 made a crucial decision. The game is like 4 years old, but they had the foundation of an incredible game. Beautiful art, fun to play, with probably the best PvP on mobile. So do they let it slowly die and move on to something else, or make major improvements and try to grow? It looks like they chose growth. I'll show more examples in a second. So what happened to War of the Visions at the end of 2023? It hit what's probably its lowest revenue point on record, coinciding with the introduction of HoloVision cards. I used to think people were exaggerating when they said Holo VCs ruined the game. But this data says otherwise. If you don't know what Holo VCs are, they're gear you can equip to power up your heroes. Regular Vision cards are easy for veteran players to level up using currencies they've saved. But Holo VCs bypassed those currencies and had their own pity system, essentially forcing veterans to spend money. It was a huge slap in the face to longtime, loyal players, and a lot of them quit. At the same time, what was going on with Epic 7? This was the dead content era. They announced a system called Awakened Potential in November, and then canceled it due to backlash. So for a few months, there was essentially zero new content, and players were jumping ship to hot new games like Wuthering Waves. This is interesting because War of the Visions ignored their players and implemented a horrible system, while Epic 7 listened to their players and canceled theirs. However, they both suffered a similar fate in the short term. What finally broke the slump for Epic 7? A new PvP arena called Draft Mode. Again, beginner-friendly content that let new players experience high-end PvP without needing to grind gear. Then came a massive spike with the release of New Moon Luna. They also expanded gear and hero inventory, which brought back veterans. But Luna was the real game changer. She disabled all the most annoying passives: revive, counter, evasion, you name it. This kicked off a trend of game-breaking hero releases, which Epic 7 quickly realized was just ticking off their player base. Their saving grace? The Epic Dash event, massively new player-friendly, and a huge success. It cemented Epic 7's direction going forward. Here's another interesting point where War of the Visions and Epic 7 recently had the same revenue. What caused that? On Epic 7's side, it was the release of Hellion Lua. The community was already frustrated with the constant power creep, and Lua was the final straw. Any video I made saying she was decent got flooded with dislikes and hate. Meanwhile, War of the Visions brought back the one thing the community had been begging for: the Final Fantasy Tactics collab. So in conclusion, War of the Visions and Epic 7 had very different focuses. War of the Visions prioritized constant new units, 1 or 2 every couple weeks. They emphasized story, voice acting, and frequent Square Enix collabs. But they did very little in terms of content updates, modernizing systems, or improving quality of life. Epic 7 also focused on new heroes, but not at the same breakneck pace. They focused more on revamping content, adding new game modes, and making it easier for new players to jump in. When something got stale, they reworked it. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But it was an honest effort to keep the game fresh and competitive with other gachas in the market. And this is where my disappointment lies with War of the Visions. They could have done an HD graphics update, like Epic 7 did. They could have reworked unpopular modes, like Epic 7 did. They could have rebalanced old fan-favorite units, like Epic 7 did. They could have released a PC client, like Epic 7 did. They could have listened to the community when they released something unpopular like Epic 7 did. When I returned to War of the Visions, I made a few videos begging the devs to refocus, ditch the predatory stuff, and just make a game that's fun and accessible. The foundation was amazing. Great gameplay, a beloved Final Fantasy IP, fantastic world building and story. In late 2022, both games were making the same revenue. One doubled down, the other checked out. Epic 7 literally just announced an update video last week with tons of new content and changes focused on bringing in new players. It's too early to say for sure if Epic 7 made the right choice, but given how hard it is for new gachas to gain traction today, I think they're on the right track. I only wish War of the Visions made the same choice. That's all I have today. Thanks for watching my video. Bye everyone.